So imagine for a second that you spend years building this massive, beautiful library inside your mind. You've got shelves upon shelves carefully categorized.
Right, like a massive collection of vocabulary words over here, grammar rules over there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you could walk through this library, pull a book off the shelves, read it perfectly, and just understand everything.
Yeah.
But then, someone actually walks up to you and asks a really simple question in that new language.
And you just freeze.
Yeah, you go to open the door to hand them a book, and the door is just completely jammed. Like you know exactly what's in there, but you just cannot get it out.
Yeah, that jammed door is what psychologists actually refer to as the freeze response. And, it's a really universal phenomenon in language learning. The input mechanism works beautifully, but the output mechanism just experiences a complete systemic crash.
Which is incredibly frustrating. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today we are unpacking the exact psychological barrier that jams that door and how to permanently unlock it.
Yeah, it's a great topic.
It really is. We're drawing on some really fascinating insights today, specifically looking at a framework developed by Bright Academy. They break down the actual mechanics of speaking a new language with real confidence. So we are going to look at why that freeze response happens in the first place and, how to basically rewire your brain to bypass it.
Right, because to fix the freeze response, we first have to understand why your brain is deploying it at all. When you are asked a question in a new language, the primary obstacle isn't actually a lack of vocabulary.
It's not.
No, and it isn't a failure to understand verb tenses either. The barrier is entirely emotional.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for detecting threats, it actually perceives the social vulnerability of making a mistake or having bad pronunciation as a literal threat to your safety.
That is wild. So your brain is basically reacting to a friendly question at a coffee shop the exact same way it would react to, like, a predator in the woods.
Exactly. It hits the emergency brake. Hard.
And that biological reaction, I guess that explains why we consistently choose silence over trying. I mean, adults are deeply accustomed to feeling competent, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know how to navigate your job, you can articulate complex thoughts in your native language, you have this established identity.
Yeah, you know who you are.
Right. And speaking a new language abruptly strips all of that armor away. You are suddenly incredibly vulnerable to sounding foolish, and, well, the ego absolutely despises that vulnerability.
Which makes sense why this traditional approach to learning a language, just reading more books or memorizing more flashcards, doesn't actually solve the problem.
Not at all.
Because if we think about this physically, like in the Bright Academy materials, it's a lot like learning a martial art or riding a bicycle.
The bicycle analogy is perfect, yeah.
Like you could sit on your couch and read a dozen books about the physics of a roundhouse kick or the theory of balancing on two wheels. You can memorize the names of every technique.
But the second you step onto the mat to spar or get on the bike...
Yeah, if you haven't actually taken hit, if you haven't trained your muscles to react under actual pressure, you are going to freeze. You're going to fall off.
Exactly. The body has to experience the imbalance to actually learn the balance, and children understand this implicitly.
For sure.
When toddlers are acquiring their native language, they make just hilarious, constant errors. They use the wrong verbs, they mispronounce syllables, they invent entirely new words out of thin air.
And they don't care at all.
Not even a little bit. They never stop speaking because they completely lack that protective ego layer. They have zero fear of judgment from, the other toddlers in the room.
Right. They're constantly getting on the mat and taking the hits. And that requires a massive reframing of how we view errors as adults, I think. Because we tend to view a mispronounced word or a grammatical slip as a total failure, like a sign that we just aren't studying hard enough.
Which is completely backward. A mistake is actually the neurological mechanism of learning in real time.
Wait, really? How does that work?
Well, when you attempt to speak, stumble, and then correct yourself, you are forcing your brain to build new neural pathways. That friction is neuroplasticity in action.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, so if you are staying perfectly within the bounds of what you already know, you actually aren't learning at all. You are just reciting.
So if the science tells us that mistakes are the literal building blocks of fluency, we really have to look at why adults sit around waiting for like a magical future date to finally start speaking.
Oh, the waiting fallacy. It's so common.
You hear it all the time, right? Like people say, oh, I'll start speaking when I've memorized 5,000 words, or I'll try having a real conversation once I fully grasp the past perfect tense.
Right, we create these arbitrary academic milestones to delay the emotional discomfort of being a beginner. We tell ourselves we are waiting for perfection, but perfection in language is a complete myth.
It really is.
I mean, native speakers lose their train of thought, they use improper grammar, they forget incredibly common words daily.
Okay, I'll play devil's advocate here, though. Let's say I accept that I'm going to make mistakes, and I decide to start speaking today using just really basic, simple vocabulary.
Okay.
As an intelligent adult with nuanced, complex thoughts, don't I risk sounding, well, kind of uneducated? Shouldn't I be striving to express my actual intellectual capacity in this new language?
That instinct makes perfect sense, but it's exactly what triggers the cognitive overload we were talking about earlier.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Let's look at the underlying mechanism of what happens when you try to do that. You have this sophisticated thought in your native language, right? You want to say, this meal possesses an exceptionally exquisite flavor profile.
Right, very fancy.
Very fancy. But when you attempt to mentally translate that complex thought word for word into your target language, you completely max out your working memory.
Because your brain is simultaneously trying to find, like, the exact synonym for possesses, map out the complex syntax, and remember all the pronunciation rules all in real time.
Exactly. The processing power required for mental translation is immense. Your system just crashes, you freeze, the conversation moves on, and you are left standing there in silence.
Yeah, I've been there. So what's the alternative?
The alternative is embracing the functional power of simple English. Instead of performing mental gymnastics to translate exquisite flavor profile, you simply say, this food is very good.
Huh. Just this food is very good.
Yep. You are transferring the core reality of your experience to the other person. The listener gets the exact same takeaway, which is that you are enjoying the meal.
I mean, language is fundamentally a tool for communication and clarity, right?
Yeah.
It's not a performance of your intellect.
Exactly. Let's take a purely functional look at a grammatically incorrect sentence, something like, he go to school yesterday.
Oh man, a sentence that would get red ink all over it in a classroom setting.
Right, absolutely. But let's break down the actual data transfer. Did the listener understand the subject?
Yesy.
Did they understand the action taking place?
Yes, go to school.
And did they grasp the timeline of the event?
Yes, yesterday.
Right, so the structural poetry is missing, obviously, but the communication was entirely successful. The data transferred from your brain to theirs perfectly.
That is such a huge perspective shift.
Mhm.
We have to shift the goalpost away from sounding like a novelist and towards simply ensuring the other person understands our reality.
Exactly.
And the actionable takeaway here from Bright Academy is to aggressively prioritize high-utility daily expressions. Master phrases like, how are you? Or I completely agree, or I need help understanding this.
Because building that stable foundation of functional communication frees up the cognitive bandwidth you actually need to relax in a conversation. Once the structure of a house is solid, you can spend the rest of your life adding the decorative vocabulary.
So, let's say you've lowered the cognitive load. You've accepted simple vocabulary. You aren't translating complex sentences in your head. The brain finally has the bandwidth to speak.
Right.
But what physically happens when you open your mouth? This brings us to another major hurdle, which is delivery, and specifically the instinct to just overcompensate with speed.
Oh yeah, there is a deeply ingrained myth that speaking fast equals fluency.
Why do we think that?
Learners assume that if they can just rush through the sentence, they will sound like a native speaker. Or at least they'll mask their mistakes before anyone notices.
It's like trying to run full sprint on a sheet of ice. Like you think you look incredibly athletic and impressive, but you're actually just frantically slipping everywhere. Your arms are flailing, you have zero control, and everyone watching is just confused and slightly worried for your safety.
That is a perfect analogy. When you accelerate past your actual capacity, your articulation just breaks down. Your breathing becomes shallow, which increases your heart rate and literally signals panic to the brain.
Which takes us right back to the freeze response.
Exactly. And more importantly, the listener simply cannot decode what you are saying. Clear communication delivered at a measured, deliberate pace is infinitely more authoritative and effective than a rushed, stumbling paragraph.
Taking a breath, owning the pause, and delivering one simple sentence clearly shows far more confidence than panicking through a complex one. But, how do you actually train that pacing? How do you physically train the muscles of your mouth to find that rhythm?
Well, there is a highly effective technique to fix this, and it's called shadowing.
Shadowing. Okay, how does that work?
Shadowing leverages the brain's mirror neurons to build physical muscle memory. The process is really straightforward. You select a native speaker whose voice and cadence you find engaging.
So maybe like a favorite actor or a podcast host or a YouTuber.
Exactly. You listen to them speak, but you aren't listening for the definition of the words. You are analyzing the actual mechanics of their delivery.
Right, so you're mapping out their breath control, where they choose to pause for effect, how their pitch rises at the end of a clause, the specific way they shape their vowels.
Yes. And then you repeat the sentence directly over them or immediately after them, attempting to identically mimic that rhythm and intonation. You act as their vocal shadow.
That makes sense.
And the brilliance of this technique is that it entirely bypasses Broca's area.
Wait, what's Broca's area?
It's the part of the brain responsible for speech production and grammatical formulation. So shadowing bypasses that and directly engages the motor cortex instead.
Oh, wow. So you are literally training the articulators, like your tongue, your lips, your jaw, to memorize the physical shape of the language.
Yeah.
Entirely removing the pressure of having to invent the sentence yourself.
Precisely. And it's completely free. It just requires your voice and a few minutes of daily focus.
Which naturally leads us to the reality of integration. Because how does a busy adult, someone managing a career in a household, actually apply these techniques without just completely burning out?
Yeah, that's the real challenge. Because if the requirement to build fluency is locking yourself in a room for 3 hours of grueling grammar drills every night, the dropout rate is going to be near 100%.
For sure. But the methodology we are looking at from Bright Academy advocates strongly for what they call the 10-minute rule.
Yes, the underlying principle here is spaced repetition. 10 minutes of highly focused, deliberate practice every single day creates significantly more durable neural pathways than cramming for 3 hours once a week.
Consistency permanently beats intensity. But I actually want to dig into one of the specific daily habits recommended in this routine, because on the surface, it sounds a bit ridiculous.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the breakdown is, read one page of a book, listen to the language for 5 minutes, learn 3 new high-utility words, speak out loud for 5 minutes, and while you speak, you must forcefully smile.
Ah, yes, the smiling rule.
I mean, I understand the reading and the listening, but changing my facial expression feels like, toxic positivity. How does smiling teach me a language?
I know it sounds completely like self-help fluff until you actually look at the neurology and physiology of what's called the facial feedback hypothesis.
Okay, unpack that for me.
When you force a smile, you actually physically alter the shape of your vocal tract. It naturally raises the soft palate and reduces tension in the jaw and the vocal cords. Yes, which physically changes the acoustic resonance of your voice, making it sound warmer.
Oh, wow. So you are mechanically altering the instrument itself.
Exactly. And beyond the acoustics, smiling stimulates the vagus nerve.
Which does what exactly?
It acts as the brake pedal for your nervous system. It lowers your cortisol levels and literally signals to your amygdala that you are safe.
So it turns off the predator in the woods response.
Yes. Furthermore, human beings are incredibly attuned to microexpressions. When you speak to someone with a tense, panicked face, their mirror neurons subconsciously adopt that tension. They become nervous and they get eager to end the interaction.
That makes total sense. But if you smile, you hack the listener's nervous system as well.
Exactly. You signal warmth and safety, they relax, their patience increases, and the entire chemical dynamic of the conversation shifts in your favor.
That is amazing. And to put this into practice, the material outlines a very specific mirror exercise you can use to build this habit.
Right, the mirror exercise.
Yeah, you stand in front of a mirror, you engage that physical smile, and you just speak simple, undeniable truths out loud. Like, hello, my name is David. Today is Thursday. It is raining outside. I am studying this language to expand my career.
It feels incredibly goofy to look yourself in the eye and state the obvious like that.
It really does.
But you are essentially performing exposure therapy in a zero-stakes environment. You are hardwiring the physical act of speaking the language to feelings of safety and physical relaxation, overriding that old panic response.
And the power of low-stakes interaction is often just wildly underestimated, I think. Take a standard textbook dialogue, right?
Yeah.
2 people saying hello, asking what they ate for breakfast, and discussing their weekend plans.
Right. It seems mundane, almost too basic to even bother practicing if your goal is to, negotiate business contracts or discuss philosophy. But those high-frequency, low-stakes interactions are the neurological scaffolding for fluency. When you repeatedly navigate basic exchanges successfully, You literally strengthen the myelin sheath around those neural pathways, making the signal travel faster and more efficiently.
You lower your baseline cortisol for future interactions, basically.
Yes. You don't need complex debates to build confidence. You need a massive volume of successful, simple human connections.
So we have this amazing physical toolkit now. We are reducing cognitive load with simple vocabulary.
Yeah.
We are pacing ourselves. We are shadowing to build muscle memory. And we're regulating our nervous systems with smiling.
It's a great start.
But all the physical tools in the world won't work if you're constantly fighting the inner critic.
That's the truth. The internal monologue is often the final and really the most resilient barrier. It's that quiet voice insisting, I'm too old to learn this, or my accent is terrible and everyone is secretly judging me.
Yeah, and the quickest way to amplify that voice is by falling into the comparison trap. If you are a beginner measuring your conversational fluidity against a native speaker, you are designing a game you literally cannot win.
You have to completely isolate your metric for success. The only valid comparison is against your own baseline from yesterday.
Just yesterday.
Just yesterday. Did you utilize one new phrase today? Did you maintain eye contact for 5 seconds longer than you did last week? Did you understand the gist of a podcast episode? If the trajectory is upward, the actual speed of the trajectory is completely irrelevant.
Which sets us up perfectly for the ultimate challenge to test everything we've talked about today. It's an active recording mission from the Bright Academy framework.
I love this challenge.
It's so good. The challenge is to take out your phone today, not next week, not when you feel quote-unquote ready, and record yourself speaking the target language for 2 uninterrupted minutes. Talk about your job, your morning routine, or your goals. Just talk.
Now, confronting the sound of your own recorded voice is universally uncomfortable, especially in a new language.
Oh, absolutely.
But the actual challenge lies in the second half of the exercise. After you record the 2 minutes, you must listen back to the entire file. And the strict rule is you are absolutely forbidden from criticizing yourself.
That is so hard. That is fighting every natural instinct we have. The immediate reaction is to cringe at a mispronounced vowel or, agonize over the slow pacing.
Of course it is. We gravitate towards self-criticism because we falsely believe punishment drives improvement.
Right.
But from a neurobiological standpoint, learning requires dopamine. When you identify one thing you did well in that recording, maybe you nailed the rhythm of a specific phrase, or your tone sounded confident, you trigger a dopamine release.
So you're rewarding the brain.
Exactly. That positive reinforcement tells your brain, hey, this behavior is rewarding, let's do it again.
Because if you ruthlessly critique every mistake, you create an aversion loop. Your brain will eventually associate speaking with emotional pain and just completely refuse to practice.
Yes, you have to actively transition from being a harsh examiner to becoming your own supportive coach.
So let's synthesize the mechanics we've uncovered today. Fluency isn't about perfectly memorizing a dictionary. It's about dismantling the myth of perfection and lowering the cognitive load by utilizing simple, functional phrases.
It's about slowing down your delivery and training your articulators through shadowing.
It's hacking your nervous system to signal safety by smiling and realizing that confidence is never a prerequisite to taking action. Confidence is the actual result of taking action. The physical act of opening your mouth and making the mistake is what builds the capability.
If we pull back the lens, the mechanisms we've discussed apply far beyond just acquiring a new vocabulary. This is really the fundamental architecture of human growth.
It really is.
Whether you are learning a language, stepping into a new leadership role, or attempting a new creative pursuit, the underlying physics remain identical. You simply cannot study your way out of the freeze response.
Action over perfection is the only way forward. So think back to that locked door in the vast, beautiful library of your mind. The knowledge is entirely useless if it remains trapped behind your ego. You have to be willing to jam the key in the lock, make some noise, and risk looking a little foolish while you figure out how to push the door open.
Small, imperfect, consistent actions are the only forces strong enough to unlock it.
So we want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. We've established that waiting for perfection practically guarantees failure, and that real confidence is only forged through taking messy, imperfect action. So look beyond language learning for a moment. What other areas in your life are you currently keeping completely silent, just waiting around for a perfect moment that is never actually going to arrive? Open the door, take the hit. We'll see you next time.